School Board.
Ms. Jamie Haynes, District 1. Here. Mrs. Linda Cuthbert, District 3.
Here.
Mr. Reuben Cologne, District 5. He's running about 15 minutes late, but he will be here. Mrs. Ida, Vice Chairman, District 2. Mr. Carl Persis, Chairman, District 4.
School Board has here. Port Orange City Council has a quorum. And we listed on the workshop, there are multiple items that we can talk about, varying from traffic safety, school rankings, I say that a little bit louder than everything else, overcrowding, concurrency planning and the like, policy, expansion plans. There are a lot of things that we have in common that we can discuss to help each other out. That's the whole idea, to have the dialogue here. Certainly what I'd like to do, Carl, if you guys would like to make any presentation on anything, this is your bailiwick to start it out with, and then we could take it through the board from here. And this is going to be interesting because I'm used to chair meeting, and I'm not used to sharing control of this. And I'm sure nobody knows what a control freak that I am, because I'm really not. But this is also a workshop, so if we go back and forth a little bit, city council workshops they don't usually keep a strict order of speaking. Now this is a little bit larger panel, so it'll be a little bit difficult, but I want to keep a collegial in a workshop. Generally speaking, what happens is one person's going to get an idea after another person speaks, and I don't really want that person to have to wait to chime in if it's significant and salient. So Carl, take it in any direction.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Let me say first off, it's a pleasure to be here in Port Orange, a place where I spent a great deal of my time, and so it's nice to be back here. Good to see you, Vice Mayor Tremont. I like saying that. That sounds good. And yeah, so we're happy to be here. This is what, Ms. Cuthbert, you were just saying, is this our 4th time around visiting with cities in a joint workshop setting? South Daytona, Deltona, New Smyrna, Edgewater, Oak Hill, all in one, and now here in Port Orange. I got a feeling this won't be the last one too. I've already been called by a neighboring city to let's do a joint workshop. So.
It might not even be the last one with us.
Well, that's good too. So anyway, we're happy to do this and be here in the beautiful city of Port Orange. I know the superintendent has a few comments, and we have a couple of presentations for you, and then we'll get this show rolling.
I'd like to thank the Commission of Port Orange for inviting us here today. I do have fond memories. In the late 90s, I began my music career at Silver Sands. This was not here, and so this is just a beautiful facility. What we have prepared, my staff has prepared to touch on several issues. We want to present, if it's permissible, Mr. Mayor. It's a 30,000-foot view, and the information that will hit on most of these issues. So we will begin with Mr. Greg Aiken, and he will address school safety at this time.
Hey, I know that guy.
Okay.
Shorter here. Good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? This on?
Great. Here we go.
Is it on now? Here we go. Should have done a mic check.
Yes.
Greg Aiken, Chief Officer, thanks for being here this evening. First, she's trying to get there, so. All right, so we're going to briefly, there we go. So first, I'd like to talk about school safety and security. Basically, what we have in place today, some of the changes that we had to take since last year about this time. We're going to start off with the school marshal program. Last year, we had some contracts with the Coast County Department, Daytona PD, a couple of other agencies, and we had law enforcement on our campuses, mainly at our high schools. And we shared at our middle schools. We had nobody on our elementary schools. Based on Senate Bill 7026 this year, here in Port Orange. I'm going to concentrate there. We have 7 school guardians. 6 are permanently assigned to the elementary schools. We have 1 assigned to the high school, and we've got 4 SRDs all assigned to the middle and high schools currently now this school year. Single point access. Last May, our board made an emergency executive order to go ahead and try to start installing our single point access on all of our campuses. All of our elementary schools are now done. We're working on our middle schools here in Port Orange. All of your elementary schools are done. We have both high schools left to do, and Silver City Middle School to do the single point access on Creekside is completed at this time. Visitor management system. About 8 months ago, we actually put in a Raptor system. It's a visitor management system that allows us to track any visitors coming on our campuses. So all of our schools have it right now. We're able to track anyone signing out a student or student early. All those features are put in place for that. We're currently working with Vo. It's a vendor of ours, a third party, implementing an active shooter app that goes on our cell phones. So all of our employees district-wide, so they're on their campus, will be able to easily swipe on this app and activate an active shooter incident on our campuses. The notification goes to districts and law enforcement dispatch, so you can actually react fairly quickly. Inter-control systems is the next phase we're getting into in security, sales tax, funding. There, after this open access, we have the front office that everybody should be going to, all of our visitors. There we're going to be putting in some cipher, a buzzer system and some cipher locks on buildings throughout the campus to make it more secure as those come on campus. Camera systems will be the next we currently have. Right now we have all middle and high schools. Our systems are old and outdated. We plan on moving forward with phase 3 on replacing all of our camera systems, not only at the middle and high schools, but all of our elementary schools by those as well. Civil Study 26 also had us look at threat assessment teams. Yes, we had a school safety security teams that functioned as our school threat assessment team. What's different this year on 26 is a school-based team that in place, but now the district team, one east side, one west side, for mental health evaluations of our students. That when we evaluate the threats that come forward, either from Fortify Florida or anonymous tips, we take those and move forward with that. One of the requirements is to allow Leo a tour of our campuses every 3 years. I can tell you, Chief, here in Port Orange, and his staff go on our campuses just about daily. So I think we meet that mandate well. Fortify Florida came out October 17th. We were one of the first school districts in the state of Florida to roll that out countywide. To date, we've gotten lots of tips from Fortify Florida, and with law enforcement help and on our campuses, we were able to resolve lots of concerns that were out there on our campuses. At this time, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to anything on safety and security.
Mr. Mayor, if I may add a little bit, I do want this council to know that since the Marjorie Stone Douglas report has come out, our district staff has studied thoroughly. We have also shared the presentation that were made to superintendents with all of the principals. We shared that in December and January. Most every recommendation we had in place, there are a few that we are working on now. For instance, interior hallway speakers, exterior speakers that go out to rounds. We do have a health team in each of the 5 districts. That consists of a psychologist, a mental health counselor, and a social worker. The vision is to offer mental health services to students in a much more deep way.
Before you continue, let the record reflect that Mr. Ruben Colon has now joined the session. Welcome.
Question, Mr. Superintendent, in relation to public safety. Part of the findings of the Parkland Commission was a recommendation to permit teachers to be armed. I'm wondering what your staff will be taking into consideration as far as it goes.
At this time, a recommendation. I was on a call with the committee of professional group today of superintendent. We do support that, and we feel that guardians in our schools, provide that level of safety. The concern we had is a teacher leaving the classroom and the students behind. I have had conversations with legislators that said they believe that teachers should be armed and they would stay with their classrooms. We believe that all doors are locked. Students are placed in the hard corner during our threat assessment with the schools. That is a level of safety there for the students. Nothing did what was interesting that we found out as superintendents, and we brought back to our principals in December, was this question: who on campus can call a code? Who on campus can call code red? And nobody did, only the. And one of the things we learned from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas is that anyone on campus that assesses a threat can call code red. That's new. I know you're a teacher, and for years I answered the question, only a principal can do that. But those shifts, I believe, that will help us. So I did hear the sheriff from Dallas County that did chair that commission, and he did change about arming teachers, but personally, I'm not comfortable with that.
I need to focus in prevention, and that's why the mental health is critical for us, and start getting it out there.
I understand that. I just, I know it's not the most popular position to have, and I'm trying hard to not speak solely as a teacher, but I can't hide my personal experience. When you look at 40 plus portables we at Spruce Creek High School, typically you look at history of mass shooting schools, they walk through doors. They don't break through them, and they're not in places, and they come to the front door. So what is the approach? What should a teacher portable, what is their last resort? Mine as a teacher's, I'll look at personally, my job is to go home to my wife and children every day. And if somebody were to come into my classroom, I have zero recourse. And that is 4 years also has zero recourse, zero defense, protect not just themselves, but for the 25 plus students that they're inclined to protect. I get teachers are educators, however, they're also called to be a protector. When a fire drill comes, they're protecting. Storm comes, they're protecting. So when that situation arises, I'm curious as to when we see one school guardian on there makes a big difference. Well, wouldn't 7 or 8 of them make a big difference in the form of teacher, which also be cost effective, be voluntary? And again, these teachers would have to go through the same qualifications, the same training that the guardians would have to do. So I'm struggling to see why that would not be an appropriate measure, given the variety of circumstances. I mean, I understand both sides of it. I'm also looking at the practical side as well.
Just for the benefit of the audience, Vice Mayor Tremont, this is just his night job. His day job is as a Volusia County school teacher. One more question, if I could, and I won't be monopolizing this. These are just the only two that I came to request. Do we have a process when it comes to informing teachers the criminal backgrounds or any charges pending on current students? I've spoken to my colleagues, school, but all around the district. And here's
here's a rap sheet of just one colleague this school year, either accused or convicted, breaking and entering, battery, assault, carjacking, armed carjacking, aggravated assault, assault with a deadly weapon, grand theft, possession of narcotics, distribution of narcotics. The question is, do we have a process or it's a mandate that would require that teachers be informed of who is in their classroom?
We have a reentry process that we have devised and we've been using, especially with our mental health teams in regards to this, and also with the threat assessment teams.
Yeah, the new indicators and flags for students indicates health concerns based on that, and that the new system will be coming out next year. So
I would encourage us to very strongly look at that process, because this is all information that this particular teacher found on his own research, based on stories and hunches from other students or himself. This is official information he had on his own. And, you know, with all the things that we cannot control, this is controllable. And I would hope that we have a process that would inform teachers who is in their classroom and what they may be capable of. I think that would be an appropriate measure of preventive maintenance.
And that is worked into the new focus. The SIS will be coming out next year, this summer, actually. And you will see a marker there, and that marker is an indicate to go to the administration and they information with you as well.
Will that be required for administration to share that with teachers?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually want to follow up on that for just a moment, if it's okay. At high school level, it happened quite often that I had to report to my school's offices, and I had to sign a form stating that I had a student in one of my class periods that had pending charges or had been picked up. For a lot of the things that he just quoted, are we no longer doing that process? Because, I mean, there were time periods where I signed 4 of them a month forms on students in my classroom, and that was how I knew that I had a student in my classroom that had charges pending and what they were.
When I was, for instance, at the same school, we used that documentation as well. And it was usually the assistant principal and the SRD that was sharing, you know, that information that had to remain, of course, confidential.
And I want to address the question about teachers being armed. As a board, we did not agree with that. Having Dr. Hill on our board at that time, this is talking about some of his assessment of teachers and their mental state as well. So when we talk about just students, we have to be concerned about teachers. So I'm definitely not as an educator myself. I have 600 students every day, and I don't want to be armed, and I will not allow my teachers to be armed for the purpose. But our board decided that was not the route we wanted to go, just based on mental health. At the time, we had 2 licensed healthcare specialists on the board who voiced their concerns, and then 2 former teachers and a principal. We just didn't think that was the best for our district.
I think part of the point that we have to make is that when it comes to school security, this is not a static situation. This is always going to be in flux, and we need to change with the times. I don't know if this is an answer now. Maybe it will be in the future. Maybe it won't be. But I think it's important that we all keep in mind. And I appreciate that. And yours.
Yeah. I just want them to understand it was not the superintendent's decision. Actually, that was the board's decision. Yeah.
If you could just clarify, Mr. Aiken, the presentation shows 4 SRDs, middle and high schools, assuming that the 2 middle schools and the 2 high schools. And I've had a lot of parents recently reaching out with concerns, and I know that agency is not represented here today, but that the sheriff's department is planning or maybe has already removed the SRDs from the middle school. Can you speak to that? And if that is occurring, is that something temporary, or is that something that is going to be a long-term?
Yeah.
And are they all? And if they are looking to take them out of the middle schools, or is there also consideration of removing the law enforcement officers from the high school campus?
Yeah, the answer is no to your high school campuses. The current SRDs that are at the 2 middle schools are still in place today. We have a class going on right now with the Guardians. If they all make it through, then the pilot program, the sheriff, we talked about in front of the board, the pilot program to replace 5. Evaluate whether we continue on with that pilot program and whether we expand it or keep it where it's at. And that would be a joint, during our joint use contract with the Volusia County Sheriff's Department. We'll make that determination at that time, and then we'll present that to our board.
Continue with the presentation. Sure.
We're going to be discussing the
School grades?
Yes.
Did I hear school grades?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Rachel. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum, and I am here to talk about school grades, instructional materials, and give you some highlights from each of the schools. So a 3-year perspective of the school grades earned by Florida Department of Education's formula for ranking schools. I'd like to point out in particular, when you look at our middle high schools, the trend there. But this does show each of the school grades. The next slide does give an overview of the demographics of the schools in the Port Orange area. There's the total enrollment as of January for each school, and that changes daily, by the way, as students register and withdraw. Those numbers do change slightly. The percentage of students use lunch per school listed, and whether or not they are a Title I school. Then, in particular, we also want to point out our tutoring programs that are available, and those are offered through different means. Title I programs offer tutoring. Schools can use those funds for tutoring programs if they're a Title I school. We have some grant fund tutoring that is taking place in our schools, and we also have some district-supported tutoring that is taking place. The total number of tutoring hours that will be provided for this school year for your Port Orange schools is 1,221 hours. Now I'm going to do the fun part, the highlights of each school. Each one of our principals is here. I'm going to wave. Each one of our principals is here, and they submitted a slide for their schools just to give you a feel. And what you'll see is, particularly with the elementary schools, is in the Port Orange area how important family is. Our schools are 5-star schools, which reflects a high level of volunteerism. For Cypress Creek Elementary, they have received the 5-star award for 11 years. They also received first, second, and third place teams in the solar car design competition at the Volusia County STEM Fest. And then there's a long list of clubs and different offerings and extracurricular activities for their students there. Horizon Elementary, home of the Eagles, they have the Hart Family, from the Hart Family Center. They have a large family involvement program. And their tutoring programs both during school and after school programs. And I understand that they also have an attendance challenge with another Port Orange school and has won that twice, but are not the current. Is that currently, Mr. Harms? Currently, I believe the Bobcats are ahead. Is that right? Go Bobcats. All right. Port Orange Elementary, you can see the large number of club offerings that they have to offer. They have the 5 core values that drive their instruction. And they are obviously readers there. Over 100 students met reading count goals by December of this year there. Spruce Creek Elementary, the home of the Bobcats. We're going too fast. This year at Spruce Creek, they are in with guts, grit, and determination. They have many opportunities to shine, including National Elementary Honor Society and their Spanish club, which is new. Sugar Mill Elementary, 5-star school for 18 years. They have different award-winning edible gardens and cooking club opportunities available. They also have the hand chimers and a robust singing cubs ensemble. Sweetwater Elementary, STEM Club. They have I've been to their news program, which is wonderful. They also have a good news club, art club, FFEA, SGA, and they have a lot of different programs that are incentives for their students, like pizza with the principal, and our participant, actually, they had a winner of the Superintendent's Summer Challenge this year at Sweetwater. Creekside Middle School. The list of extracurricular activities I won't read for you because it is so long, but their students have a wide range of offerings. I'm particularly interested when I was looking at this in the fishing club. That sounds like a lot of fun. They also have many advanced classes and opportunities for digital tool certification, performing arts, STEM, and robotics clubs. Silver Sands Middle School, Wiles asked me to point out their different academy offerings. This year they have the Academy of Exercise and Sports Science, Performing Arts Academy, Workforce Academy. They have the Agriculture, Jazz Band, Science Olympiad, and many different club offerings. And Atlantic High School, the School of Opportunity. At this school, they are a wall-to-wall academy school. All students have the opportunity to participate in one of their academies. They have on-campus dual enrollment courses, which are housed there through DSC and Embry-Riddle, an extensive athletics program, and more than 30 clubs and service organizations. Spruce Creek High School. If you didn't know, it's a great day to be a Hawk. They have active ROTC programs. 50% of the students take an applied technology or vocational course. 70% of the students have graduated with a GPA of a B or higher. And the students have contributed over 40,000 service hours to this community. And now the fun topics. The instructional materials. I was asked to address where we are with particularly our state process for textbook adoption. The top part is a historical timeline of what we were following until last week, and then I'll talk about what happened last week. In 2014-15, the Florida standards in English language arts and mathematics were approved by our Department of Education. When the Department of Education adopts materials, we follow a cycle. So every 5 years, math is up for adoption. Every 5 years, ELA is up for adoption, and they rotate on that cycle. That coincided the last time we adopted standards, just as this time, with the textbook adoption. So the decision was made at that time for math and our English language arts to use modules, which are teacher-collected resources that our teachers have been teaching from. This past year, in 2017-18, we adopted science materials and made a recommendation and purchased those materials. Those materials are being implemented this school year. This school year, we convened a textbook adoption committee to adopt math materials. They have gone through the process of the work, and then last week it was announced that the Florida Department of Education has suspended textbook adoption for this year. So there's no textbook adoption to occur, official textbook adoption to occur this year. They then reordered how we will roll out textbook adoption. So next school year, the 2018-2019 school year, will be adoption for CTE and world languages. Then in 2021 will be the adoption year for reading language arts, and 2022 will be that implementation. 21-22 will be math instructional materials adoption, and 22-23 will be the implementation. That does align with what the anticipated timeline for the new standards rollout is. And we can come back to that question. The other questions that we were asked to address have to do with the change to the Bell schedules. This negotiating cycle, I'm pleased to announce that with our support staff and teachers unions, we were able to put in place a 3-year contract. That 3-year contract included a 30-minute extension to the elementary day for our students, which puts us in line with other counties as far as the bell-to-bell time that our students are in school. It also included a 10-minute increase to the teacher planning day. Those negotiations and an agreement was reached in November of 2018. In January, we convened a committee consisting of teachers, principals, some of who are here, parents, and district staff in January and February to look at what the time requirements are and what possible bell schedules we could have that could also work in conjunction with the transportation schedules. And the plan was to put out a survey, which was to be released before spring break so that a recommendation and facts could be taken to our school board so that they could make a recommendation for bell times before spring break. However, given the enormity of the task, we have asked to go back and create that survey, and our board is convening at a special meeting on March the 28th to review that data. Once that survey goes out, we will have a QR code. The survey will also have some information along with it, and we will need everyone's help in making sure that all stakeholders have a vote and a voice in that survey. And I think those are my slides, if there's any questions.
Questions, anyone? Comments? Scott, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I just want to share some general comments and thoughts about quite a few things, and some of them kind of, I guess, tie in together. And I see that we've got some other slides coming up where we're going to talk about school populations and sizes and things like that. So forgive me that I realize that a lot of these things tie in different directions. One of the things here in Port Orange that we are really experiencing, which is, I know is occurring a lot on the east side of Volusia County, are traffic congestion issues. And we've got 10 school systems in the city of Port Orange. So schools are a huge part of our community, and also impact us in a lot of different ways off the campus. And so with the change in school times, one of the real big concerns that I have is with regard to the safety and process, the traffic of how we get these folks to and from these different schools. And of course, kind of unique to our city as well is with one of the largest counties, not a zone, so that's another big impact because they're not really able to, to walk to school, ride a bike from nearby and things like that. So I'm curious, what kind of study have we done in terms of looking at, and you'll have to forgive me because I am drawing some assumptions here. I know there was 3 different options that the school district is looking at, so correct me if I'm wrong there, but in terms of those options, what have we done to look at those to see how those might impact us here in the city with regard to the already current traffic issues that we have?
I will let someone else speak to the traffic issues, but I can speak from firsthand experience as the former principal of Spruce Creek Elementary. I know no matter what time, when you have schools starting at the same time, there is traffic. However, I will say that we were tasked with coming up with 3 very diverse times, and we are going back we are reconvening the committee next week to look at those diverse times that we came up with, and honestly, they may decide that those are the times that we want to keep and present to the public, or to tweak them a little bit. We also want to look at other options that are kind of similar to what we already have in place, and then it would be up to the public to. There was a lot of research about looking at our high school time and the advantages of starting that later. So that was one consideration, and we tried to give as many diverse options as possible so that we can meet the needs of everyone.
Scott, if I may, I just want to add some thoughts to that. We as a city, I don't want to say this unprecedented because I know there are other cities that participate as well in this, but all 10 of our traffic schools are monitored before and after school. And in a lot of cases, we will do traffic control when necessary. So, we're going to need some coordination with those time changes because that's going to require a lot of juggling on our part. The other thing I wanted to mention was from a quality of life standpoint, and my entire council has heard people loud and clear for a long time that the biggest issue people have in Port Orange is traffic. So we are always concerned if we're generating a large amount of traffic during peak traffic times. So that's a concern. But I realize it's a juggling act because starting high school a little bit later sounds desirable. Does it end up somebody's having practice at 6 a.m. because they can't have it at school? I don't know. For the majority of high school students, I think it would be better to start the day a little bit later. But when you start a middle school day at 9:40, and one of the options, I believe that was one of them, parents have to work at 8:30, 9 o'clock. I know for a fact we have a lot of children on our city center campus after school, after Silver Sands gets out. Are they going to be here in the morning because the campus is open yet? And how many students might not make it to campus? And, will that create a truancy problem? So these are probably some of the things you're probably aware of, but we are too. And I want to throw that out there for you. And we look forward, everybody in the room and people watching, to the survey and to the meeting in which you guys are going to discuss it. I'm sure that will be a lot of fun for you guys.
A lot of fun.
So to follow up with that, do I understand that the survey will dictate which times the district goes with?
Not, so the survey will provide our board with information that they need to make a decision. And I am glad that you said that, because one of the things with this, one of the reasons we asked for more time to put that survey out was that we could think through some of it and include in the survey, if the time were selected, what teacher hours would look like, some of the aftercare options and bus schedules as well, so we could work through those.
Yeah, so your initial question asked, did we look at data? Yes, we did. Traffic data, pickup times for elementary, middle, and high school, whether they start first or start last. All of that data we did review as we move through this process with our committee. We're data-driven decisions. What we're trying to do is present that to our board coming up. So we have looked at all that data.
Okay. And maybe it's already being done, but my only recommendation and what I ask is as much coordination as possible with the police department, because I will say that it really does put a strain on the police department in the mornings, and we're glad to do it, and we know that it's very beneficial for the community to have our officers out there in the school zones and assisting wherever we can as much as possible, but we also have some limitations there, so whatever coordination we can have there was very, very greatly appreciated, so I appreciate that. Just a comment in regards to the grade, and I'm not sure who's best to answer this. So historically, the schools in Port Orange have always been shining stars, in my opinion. I mean, to have 10 public schools in a single city that have been such high quality and had such great impact on the community, there's many different things. I think we're all on this council very prideful of, and I know our residents are very much as well. And we can't help but notice that in the last few years, we're seeing more and more schools that have grades that have not been, or rankings, whatever. I know that terminology, it's changed a little bit, that don't necessarily have what we've been accustomed to in past years. And I know you show us a 3-year snapshot here to speak, but if you go back and look at like 2012, 2013, every school in Port Orange is pretty much an A and a B, you know, and so we're not really used and accustomed to see that. Can you speak to that? Is that because the criteria is changing?
Particularly in the elementaries.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that is one issue. The criteria did change. Our standards changed. On this slide, you can see in 2014, 2015, the standards changed and the assessments changed as well. So that is one contributing factor. I don't know that I can give you like this is the answer. If we had that silver bullet, I'm sure we would do it. The graphics have changed some, not I don't have the exact figures of how drastically they've changed, but I do know just from being at Spruce Creek Elementary, which I'll use for an example, when I started there were about 600 students, and now there's over 850. And that's when you're serving that many students who are in different situations in their home. We also are looking at different materials to support our learners. Those also will hopefully help. And then we have our but yes, there were different standards for sure and different assessments that we were graded under.
And I would like to add, what did the district bring to Port Orange schools this year? First of all, we talked about data, but we talked about tutoring, but it was data-driven tutoring. So we're very prescriptive on how we're approaching that. We've also ramped up our coaching, where it's side-by-side coaching of the teachers to improve planning and instruction. Our professional learning communities that we have, usually that's in the elementary school, that's your grade level. We've sent quite often, whenever they've requested, our subject area specialist, again, to help them with their planning and their instruction. So we've been very available to the schools. All they have to do is request, and then, you know, we come in and we help them. Some schools struggled in certain areas, and we also provided P development. When I look at those grades, you see the C grades, it goes 4 to 4. And as we started tearing apart the data, what we looked at, one of the areas that we struggled with was really your lowest third, and moving your lowest third forward, just showing a learning gain. Not every child is going to be proficient, but every child can make a learning gain. And so that's been a lot of our work, you know, at these schools.
I think we can all agree that we don't like the grades we're getting now.
No, you don't.
And I think we can all agree that we'd like to see better and do better. And that's part of the reason why we're here, if there's anything that we could do to help with that in that mission. At the end of this workshop, each and every one of us would like to go around and make sure that every member has a chance to make comments, and I'm sure that all 5 of you would probably like to address the school grade as part of your comments. So, just be warned. Okay. Particularly in the elementaries.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Sarah Lee Morrissey. I'm the Director of Planning and Construction for the school district. I'd like to just take a moment and let you know that with the exception of myself, Penelope Cruz and one other planner in this entire county have been the 3 people who have can speak of how things were and or are, how we've gotten to, and I would this commission to know that I really appreciate the relationship that I have personally, both with Susan in Parks and Rec and Penelope, because I think overall, in terms of what you just mentioned, Mayor, working together, how do we do that? I know that I can call either one of these women and or send them an email, and I can expect a response in a very short order. And I appreciate the work that they help me do. Wanted to take a quick look at some enrollment trends here and take you back from school year 2012-13 through our current school year. We're showing all of our Port Orange schools. The blue line is our elementary schools, our high schools, and orange are our two middle schools. I think that what's obvious here is that we are seeing an increase in our elementary school enrollment as well as an increase in the high schools. What I'd like to point out to you is where we are today, regardless of which particular grade level we're looking at. We saw such a decline in our enrollment countywide during the recession, but the community of Port Orange was no exception to that decline, that we're only just now reaching that same point that we were at when we were opening Cypress Creek. Cypress Creek Elementary was the last new school that we constructed here in Port Orange. We opened that in 2007, and our elementary school enrollment is about 100 students more overall than what we experienced in that year of opening. So wanted to show you what I refer to here, for lack of a better term, level of service and in-zone enrollment. Now I know Penelope is good about sharing our annual reports with you, and that includes the level of service report. But just to make sure everyone in the audience understands the term level of service, when we were working together back in 2005, 2006, 2007, after the state mandated that we, all counties, all school districts, and the municipalities within the state adopt a school concurrency system. We jointly hired one consultant to help us with the different standards. One of the standards that we had to adopt was a level of service standard. And the level of service standard does vary depending on school level. At our elementary and middle schools, the level of service is measured at the individual school level, and it is 115% of permanent capacity. So these numbers that you see in blue, Cypress Creek at 108, Horizon 107, Port Orange 117, and it carries on across the slide. That is some basic math. That's taking your 20-day membership count, dividing it by our permanent capacity. I can tell you that, again, if I look back at where were we in the city of Port Orange right before we opened Cypress Creek Elementary. So we opened Cypress Creek in August of 2007. We all adopted the level of service standard, the interlocal agreement, in July of 2007. I can tell you that Sweetwater Elementary was at 179% of permanent capacity, and Horizon was the second highest, and it was at 170% of permanent capacity. So things have certainly changed over those 12 years. And you can see that some of the schools are over their permanent capacity, but we still have a little ways to go before we would be looking at mitigation agreements with new residential. The orange bar that is there is the in-zone enrollment measured on that same day for each of the individual schools. And so you can see that that varies quite a bit. Cypress Creek is at 92% of their total enrollment is in zone. When we say in zone, what that means is that's the enrollment within that specific attendance boundary. Out of zone does not necessarily mean that the students are coming from out of Port Orange, but they are definitely coming from out of the specific school that the student is zoned for. So for instance, if you look at Port Orange Elementary, which is the third school from the left, you see that has a relatively low in-zone enrollment, 62%. Port Orange Elementary is a small school. It has a very small attendance. It has a gifted program. We offer gifted as cluster at cluster schools, and there are a number of schools that feed to Port Orange Elementary's gifted program, several of which are from outside of the Port Orange community. What I thought was somewhat interesting is if we look at the secondary schools, which are the schools on the right, we see Creekside Middle and Silver Sands. You see a pretty high in-zone enrollment, 96% at each. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that the school board program, most people know that locally as our variance program. We just actually talked about this with the board at our last workshop. Basically, we have defined our schools at or over capacity if they are at 90% of their permanent capacity. So basically, with the exception of siblings or school-based employees, we're generally not approving out-of-zone variances to schools that are at or above 90% of their permanent capacity. And then you can look at the very far right, you see Atlantic and Spruce Creek High. I know everyone is more than familiar with Spruce Creek High's overcrowding, 41 portables, but also their IB program, which certainly contributes a lot to their enrollment. But I think what is interesting is both Atlantic and Spruce Creek show a very similar enrollment in terms of in-zone, and that is for both schools due to the number and the variety of programs that each school offers. And then the last slide that I wanted to share with you, and this has some new information on it. We just, at our last workshop with our board, we presented a updated school impact fee study. And this slide includes some information that was included in that updated study. And so Penelope, you're going to be interested in this because this is the first time that people are seeing this. But this shows our student generation rate by residential type over time since 2004. So this is reflective of 4 different school impact fee studies that we've done. And on the far left is your student generation rate. Now this is county-wide by single family, which is your detached single family traditional residential type. And you can see that in 2004, we had a student generation rate of 0.396 per unit, and it has dropped to 0.273 in this study that we have just released. Interestingly enough, was what we saw in multifamily, which according to the consultant, Tyndale Oliver has advised us that they are seeing an increase of students in multifamily. This is typically your apartments, although here in a coastal county like Volusia, condominiums are included in your multifamily dwellings. But across the state, we are seeing an increase in students in apartment complexes. We noticed it during the recession. We noticed a lot of movement. As you probably remember, the foreclosure rate was very high. We saw a lot of movement actually out of our Deltona area to the east side of the county. We definitely do have more apartment complexes on the east side of the county. But this most recent impact fee study did document that the student generation rate is increasing in our multifamily units. That third one represents mobile home parks. Again, a very slight increase, although overall all of these are lower than they were in 2004. And then that last set of bars, that is your average overall residential types. In some different presentations, I've talked about the change in median age. In our county, we've aged by about 10 years over the last couple of decades. So it's really not a surprise to see the student generation rate dropping. So our growth, we're happy to see that we are growing again, and that the recession and the impact of the recession is changing, though certainly, and I think Ms. Hazel was referring to it when we were talking about the number of schools that we have that are Title I schools now in the entire county. And before the recession, our district had 44% of its students on free and reduced lunch, and now we're upwards of 70%. So while we're seeing some positive indicators in the economy, our families' income levels are not changing as quickly as we'd like to see them. Those are the data pieces that I've brought for your information.
Questions, comments? I'm sure that there's got to be some. I'm certainly looking at some of the trends myself. Elementary capacities of the 6 Port Orange schools, 102.9%. The middle schools, 103.7%. The high schools, 112%. The 5-year trend in enrollment has jumped at the middle schools and the high schools 2% and 3%, but at the elementary levels, 14.2%. So knowing that the housing market is not inactive right now, we know that it's very active. I know that, and I hope that we're going to have the conversations, and we can certainly help with that, about where the next schools might be. We might not know the answer as to when, but certainly we need to start identifying as to where. And I know that we've had some of those preliminary conversations, but this is certainly not something I think we can allow ourselves to fall behind on, knowing that we've already got a lot of work to do in the classroom to get our schools back to where they were grade-wise. We certainly don't want to have the same problem from a capacity standpoint as well, and the numbers kind of bear that out.
And I'm pretty sure you're familiar with where we have land banked some property, but so that everyone is familiar, we do have several properties in the area, 2 of which were purchased specifically for future schools. One is in Port Orange, and it is we refer to it as the Karasi site. Mm-hmm. We happen to buy it from the Karasi owners, and it is right next to the Karasi Sports Complex. We also purchased property in Venetian Bay back in 2004, and that also was for the purposes of growth and future school sites. We do have...
Those are potential elementary sites.
We've talked about when they were initially purchased, yes, but we've talked about some other options. As we've watched the demographics change, more recently we've talked a little bit about K-8s, but just talking, conversation, nothing definite. And we do have another site on Big Tree and Nova, which we've actually listed that one for sale. We looked at that property for a future elementary school site. The concern I have with it is how close it is to South Daytona Elementary and Sugar Mill. And it really is not in an area where new residential development is occurring, and so for that reason, I recommended to the board, and it is a property that's been declared surplus.
Okay. Other than mine, questions or comments? Scott, take it away.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of echo a little bit what the mayor is talking about, and what I'd like to ask for is I'd really like to ask the school board elected body as well as the superintendent to really take a look at the balance of the populations at the Port Orange School comparatively to the rest of East Volusia County to see what's there. Looking at the school board's full utilization chart, it jumps right out at the high schools that there's a major imbalance in East Volusia County. You've got currently Spruce Creek High School sitting at 126%. I got to tell you, the staff over there is amazing. I don't know how they do it. Dr. Sparger and his team and everybody over there with the stuff that's going on. I've had a very unique look into that school as well as all the schools in Port Orange over the last 20 years of my life. It's amazing. However, it's 126%, where you look at the rest of the schools on East Volusia County, Atlantic's at 98, but then it really starts to drop off with Mainland at 80, Seabreeze at 95, and New Smyrna Beach at 85%. And I know that building new schools take a tremendous amount of money. I get that. And so what I'm wondering is in the short term, if the school board can look at maybe rebalancing some programs to offset and move some of these capacities around a little bit geographically in East Volusia County to maybe kind of bring a little bit of balance and give a little bit of elbow room, because like I mentioned before, you know, not so much just the impacts that occur on the campus, which I get that's the primary responsibility of the school district, but these are major impacts in our city as well in a lot of different ways. And at some point, it's just getting to be too much, you know, whether that's just overflow and traffic and overcrowding and all those different things. So I'd really appreciate if the school board elected body could just take a look at those numbers and see if you're not seeing that same thing kind of jump out. And the same thing kind of holds true with some of our elementary schools, as you indicated up here, where, you know, we just saw, well, it seems like yesterday, I know it's been a few years, but the one out on Williamson, Cypress Creek, to see that it's already over 100% in capacity, or the terminology utilized there, the permanent, what is it called? Permanent
capacity.
Permanent
just
capacity.
Means we're
Okay.
not referring to portables.
Yeah, so, you know, unfortunately, that's in my district, as well as Spruce Creek High School, and we've got Paytas Construction building developments. You've got IC Homes building big developments. Venetian Bay is rapidly growing, which is in the New Smyrna area, but in close proximity. And so you've just got a lot of growth coming. And I know we're not going to be rebuilding schools or building new schools in that short amount of time to be able to compensate for that. So I really think it's going to be important to take a look and see if there's any opportunities maybe to rebalance some of these programs. And I did have one parent ask me, is there only one IB program on the east side of the county and one on the west?
Yes.
And has the district ever looked at putting one in the northeast portion of Volusia County to have an IB program up there, or another kind of program?
We have
Northeast, why don't you just say Seabreeze? I mean,
I graduated. It's got to be in school.
It's a great school.
We have addressed redirection of programs through academies, but we started the Cambridge program that helps. There is one IB program on the east side, which is at Spruce Creek, and one on the west side. We have discussed, I know I've discussed this with Mr. Russell as chair last year, about placing another IB. It's the room. We'd overcrowd other schools. We would also have to find new teachers for that, new classroom space. There's a lot more to it. Plus, it's very, very expensive. So as an alternative, at Spruce Creek, at Seabreeze High School, at Deltona, and I believe Pine Ridge as well. Two on the west side, one on the east side, different opposite sides of the county, we're offering the Cambridge program. Pilot program at New Smyrna High, will be next year. And where else? I know the one at New Smyrna.
At University.
And at University High School. So that is in between an advanced placement program and an IB program. I do know quite a few parents that I've talked to whose students are no longer traveling from Ormond Beach to Port Orange, and that now they're in their neighborhood school of Seabreeze, attending the Cambridge, and they're very, very happy. We are expanding that program. I have grandchildren who live in Port Orange and who go to New Smyrna. So we do because of the medical academy. So, and then we have the uniqueness at Spruce Creek High School. We have the ROTC program, as well as IB. We have the AIDER program, Finance Academy, that other neighboring high schools do not have. But then that's also taken back. Mainland has the wall-to-wall. It has an emergency medical. What do they call them? What do you call someone who triages?
Paramedic?
Yeah, they have a kind of a
Or the
paramedic
EMT.
program at Mainland High School. Thank you, Ms. Wright. And also the medical academy, plus sports academies are very general, sports medicine. So it's very important that we spread, and I do know Mr. Colon and Ms. Haynes, who are from the west side, would like more academies on their west side as well. But we also have to follow the state law. We're not allowed to build schools until we reach a certain percentage of overcapacity. That's why we have not built at Venetian Bay yet, because we haven't gotten to the point, as Ms. Morrissey talked about, 179% overcapacity. We have to get to that point before the state will allow us to do that. We have had discussions at our workshop last week about bonding. The board voted 3-2 not to bond because the half-cent sales tax. I was against it because my number one thought was the classroom, an additional classroom building at Spruce Creek High School. And I did not want the neighborhoods of the haves and the have-nots, because some schools are not nearly as overcrowded. We have an overcrowded school at in Orange City called University High School. They too are burgeoning with multiple family units being built right across the street. So we also have to watch to see what the age level is going to be moving into the homes, whether the homes are overpriced for middle income people who would have younger families, or they being built for retirement age people like myself. So there's an awful lot of studying to do, but we also have to follow what the state allows us to do.
Okay, just before we move on, in the interest of time, just so everybody knows, our city council has a meeting across the way at 6:30, so I'm going to try to wrap this by 6. After we get through this part of the presentation, Scott's already started. I want to make sure everybody on the board has a chance to make comments, albeit brief ones. That's a hint to everybody. But we want to make sure that we hear everybody. If we have time at the end, and I know it's tight, I am a participation kind of guy, and if we have time for audience participation, we'll have some. But if not, you also have the opportunity to talk to these people one-on-one. They're here right now, and they would love to hear from you, wouldn't you? Because we get that all the time ourselves. But you have an opportunity face-to-face with them after this meeting's over. So when we run off, unless they've got other obligations, this is what we all do, all of us do. We're here to listen. So with that.
Mayor, I just wanted to echo on Mrs. Cuthbert's comments. We're aware of the concern that you expressed, and I did want to just, albeit it takes a long time and it's not as quick as we all would like, but I would like you to know that in the last 5 years, Atlantic High has increased its enrollment by about 200 students. Mm-hmm. And that has been actively based on all the different things that Mrs. Cuthbert was talking about. And that does mean that the enrollment has dropped. You won't notice it because it's still so crowded, but the enrollment has dropped at Spruce Creek High. And again, it's because we are trying to get students to attend in zone and or closer. So well aware and a little bit of a change.
Well, for some reason, I'm a fan of the Law and Government Academy at Atlantic High School, so it's certainly a big draw there. Okay, let's put a bow on this. Comments, why don't we start with Scott and we'll work our way around. Or did we get enough
I think
of
I've said
you yet?
enough today, so I'm going to yield.
Well, I'm going to get more of you later, so putting a bow on you now is good.
One thing that several of you have brought up, one of the reasons why we voted last year and negotiated very strongly to extend the elementary day 30 minutes. First of all, my own personal advocacy for that was to give teachers more planning time. Teachers at the elementary level have virtually no planning time. So we want to give them much more so they can plan more meticulously, think, draw a breath, and though they can perform a little bit better. It also allows the arts at the elementary level to expand. Music, gym, as well as recess, and music, art, gym, and any of the other STEM additional programs that they have. Give them a little more time. Yes, we had to make sure that we are in compliance with our number of minutes with teacher to students and as well as the academic time that we have, but that was the primary reason, which is it does create somewhat of a domino effect. But it also gives us an opportunity to be innovative, to rethink, to make sure we address the needs of our high school students, our middle school students, as well as our elementary students. We only want what is best for all of our students, but we have a huge diversity across this county. We have wealthy areas, we have not so wealthy areas, we have very well educated areas, not so educated areas, and we are dedicated to educate to the best of our ability every single one who enters our doors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to follow back up on what Chase said when he asked about notifying teachers if they have students in their room. So, as Mr. Russell said, he and I were at the same high school, just in different time periods of our lives, and that was a standard policy. So I didn't get a clear answer about was that just for that high school, or can that be something we implement across the board, I believe at all middle and high schools, because I do feel, having been a teacher at one point in my career, that teachers should know if a student is in their room. I thought actually there was policy on it, or legislative policy. That's what I was told when I was hired at the high school. And I signed the first form was that as a teacher, I legally had to be told if I had a student in my classroom that had charges pending. So I'd like to follow up on that, because I think teachers have the right to know if they have a student in their room and to know what the charges are, because they're being asked to educate them, and that is a component that they need to be aware of as part of educating them.
I think I know what you'll be championing.
Yes.
Chase?
Just a brief thank you for the mayor, Mr. Chairman, Tom and Jake for putting this together. The only comment I have is just I appreciate both crews getting together. I've watched our school board in action, and I appreciate your diligence. I appreciate your sincerity and your genuineness and what you guys do. Aside from that, I'm looking forward to our public comments. Thank you.
So I'm the newcomer to this. I want to thank you all for the invitation. And one of the challenges in my area that I see is a lot of times we don't collaborate together. It should not take just meetings like this to figure out what is going on in our schools, and that's one of the things I am working hard in my district on the west side. I want to open my phone number. I will be handing out cards here shortly. Anything you all need, whether you reach out to me, email, and look forward to invitation to some of our schools on the west side. We'd welcome you all to come see what we're doing over there. And like I said, my door is open, and I apologize to the public for giving them my back.
Glad you're here. Thank you. Drew?
Yeah, since I've been on council, and it's over 6 years now, this is the first time we've met jointly with the school board. So I think it's a good idea to do it a little more regularly than maybe, every 6 years or whenever the last time it was done. But it's a good opportunity. But based on the trend of the, enrollment ticking up and the school capacity, basically every school in Port Orange except one was at 100 or over. Is that trend also, is it affecting the transportation, the school buses? Are they also overcrowded? And then how does that get addressed? Is it more bus routes are added, or how do you handle the overcrowding on the school buses? Because it's all about safety, and that's a safety issue.
What is interesting about Port Orange, we were talking about this today, that many of the students in our schools can take the school buses, but school can take school transportation. However, their parents choose to get them to school, by other means.
Okay.
There is room to grow. When I was hearing about the traffic concerns within the city, there's room to grow on our buses.
Okay, so the buses are not overcrowded?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to check on that one.
Now, you may have a sub every now and then, and you have to
Yeah,
consolidate.
okay.
But on the whole,
All right. That's it.
Thank you. I was here more in the listening capacity, just to hear what some of your concerns were, as well as our audience, so that we can address those. But thank you, and heard some good things that we can have some heart-to-heart conversations at our board. Thank you.
I'm glad that you're listening, since you're my elected official, so.
Yes, I am, and I like your son.
My son's in the room, so be careful. Mr. Russell, anything to add?
I promise that every elected official will get a copy of the survey, and you can participate in that way as well.
Mr. Johansson.
Yes, sir. A couple of personal comments that I'll share with the school board and Tom here. When we first moved here 3 years ago, we did take the bus. I think the first day we got kicked off because we had a trumpet, and then the next day we got kicked off because we had a baseball bat. So if you're on the baseball team, you need to bring your baseball bat to school. If you can't bring your baseball bat on a bus, then you ain't riding a bus. So I share with you that, and I'm sure there's a way to solve it. I also, when we put our freshmen on the bus, had about 8, we were fairly new, but 8 or 9 parents going, "You let your kid ride the bus?" So there's either a perception or a reality that the bus is either dangerous, dumb, or not cool. So we might need to get cool buses. I don't know. But one of the things that Tom and I talked about, and I talked with a council member or two, is joint meetings. Somebody asked me, why are you having a joint meeting with the school board? Is there a problem? And I think the answer to that is, let's not wait till there's a problem to have a joint meeting with anybody. So I'm glad we don't have any major problems. I'm glad we're addressing some issues. I'm sure the school board's got some issues with the city. As a matter of fact, I know we got a few that we're working on. If Johnny Cash is here, I know he's happy about the pedestrian crossing. We're working on things like that. We want to get our kids to school safely. There's a Yorktown sidewalk project, so they don't have to swim from one part to the other to get to school. But we're doing some things around the city to make it safer, and I think with your permission, Supervisor, that we do this twice a year at a minimum. So that's my recommendation.
All right, I'm going to save Carl's comments and my comments to the end so that we can put a bow on it. We have about 9 minutes in which we can allow some public participation. I would ask that anybody who wishes to speak be prepared. Step up to the microphone, and anybody who wants to speak behind them, be ready to go so that we can keep it moving. Since we do have limited time, keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and please tell us who you are when you step up. So anybody who would like to address the board, comments, questions, and the like, we will listen and then respond after you speak if necessary, but now is your time. And I don't see a big rush of people coming to the microphone. I see one.
Here's one.
I figured this guy would come up.
Here's one.
There's another. All right, here we go.
All right, my name is Jennifer Card, and I am a member of the Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce. I sit on the education team, which is a vital team. You'll see several of our members here today. We have worked diligently to try to bring the business community into the schools. And so we encourage the schools to embrace us, take us in more. We've just dropped off supplies to you, so you should know who your person is. We have a dedicated representative in every one of our 13 schools because we also embrace Longstreet. So if you have any questions for the business community, we welcome you to please contact the Chamber of Commerce, and we can put you with any of these guys back over here. Thank you.
Me too. I'm a member as well.
Thanks, Jen. And who are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Mayor. I'm Patrick Burnett. I go to Atlantic High School. I also happen to be a resident of 3443 Country Walk Drive. I believe you are as well.
Clock's ticking on you.
All right. So first, I'd like to thank Chairman Persis, Superintendent Russell, the Mayor, City Council, the board for doing this, arranging this. I appreciate being able to speak out. And that's actually what I want to talk about in terms of changing the school schedule, when they start, when it ends, the buses. I think it's important that the students get input on this. I hear about a survey. In fact, I took a survey at school today about school, which frankly the questions were pretty not open-ended, and I don't know how useful they'll be, but I hope they are. But I just wanted to say that I think it'd be really helpful if the students had input on this, especially as someone who's now 18 and able to vote. I think as a high schooler, I know I've been able to make a decision and consciously think about when school starts and how that would help. I think pretty much everybody in the room probably read the News Journal article about this issue in itself, and I think pretty much everybody would agree that high schoolers starting a little later would be beneficial for them. So that's my official stance, and I think that in terms of the school board making a decision and the city council making a decision, I think the individuals who will be affected by this most should have their voice heard. So thank you.
Students or stakeholders too, is that the message?
Well done.
So I just wanted to let you know I had the privilege, I visited Pine Ridge High School and visited 4 classrooms just for that reason, to find out what the students had to say. And believe it or not, the schedule that they most wanted was that 7 a.m. schedule, because it allowed for their afternoon duties, which included whether it's work, whether it's sports, some of our fields don't have lights, and or siblings they had to be home for. And so that was shocking to me, and so I appreciate your comment, because I did exactly that, and I was able to gain feedback that otherwise I would not have been able to appreciate. Thank you.
Next up.
Hi, my name is Landon Stewart. I'm enrolled at Atlantic High School, and I'm in the ALAG Academy. And my stance on the school schedule time is that it should start earlier. As mentioned before, I do a lot of sports. I play a lot of sports. I'm on multiple class boards and very involved in the school. And I believe that the time should not be extended later, because when I get home, I have things to do. I have chores, I have projects, homeworks, and studies and things. And I like a little daylight in my life. And when I get home, I don't get much of that. And if we start earlier, and it's only a 30-minute difference, and that sounds kind of that sounds kind of bad, but it's only 30 minutes, and I feel like it'd be a lot better. So, no. And students should know more about some of these issues addressed, as with the criminal records with students and teachers to be addressed at the school level, because I am aware of a lot of my other students and things and some of the alleged acts, and I am, let's just say, somewhat concerned with a few of the cases, and I feel that we should have maybe a survey. The one today was okay, but I feel like it could be a little more open. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate speakers being brief too, so that we have time to get them all in.
Thank you. I'm Cheryl Hensher. I'm with the Port Orange Chamber as a volunteer in the Education Committee and Economic Committee. I thought this is wonderful, a lot of insights. My one concern with the time change is family life. It's going to affect people's families and also as business owners. As we all know, it's hard enough to find good, reliable people to work. And I think if you have to drop your child off at 9:45, that's going to be really hard on businesses. They're going to have to shuffle their hours. And economically, I think that's going to be very difficult, and economically look at it too for the growth. But thank you for everything, and it was I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cheryl. Good to see you.
Thank you.
My name's Tom. I'd like to thank all of you for coming here. You really elaborated a lot of stuff that I had questions for, so I don't even have to ask that many. Could you expand on, you said there's room for the bus growing?
Yes. Many parents are opting out of student transportation that the district provides. If we do see a growth, more students taking a bus, we will provide more routes.
Would that be like more buses, or you're talking about like?
Yes.
I've got kids in elementary, middle, and high school, and the middle school seems to be the ones on the bus the longest. Mm-hmm. And I was told it's because there's not enough buses. That's why all the school hours are the way they are. They're changed. But if that's not the case, I take my kids to school, and you're right. It's a ridiculous amount of traffic. And I was wondering, as we go down the road, and you're talking about expanding schools, getting more schools, are we doing ourselves more harm by creating so many schools? Then you're creating traffic in 8 different places. So that was a thought. That is like, instead of making the schools bigger, and I know that you don't want a school so big that the kids can't get from class to class, but our population isn't that big that we got 6 elementary schools, and it seems like we're creating our own problems by having too many routes. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
That's awesome.
I'm Cindy Fisher. I work for the school board and longtime Port Orange resident. I just wanted to hopefully offer some clarification. There is a statute on the books. Mr. Aiken probably knows the number. There is a statute on the book that does require school districts to notify school principals and teachers if they have students that have had felony arrests and or felony petitions filed. The arrest comes first, the petition sometimes comes second, and sometimes it goes away. So we get a report into our offices daily from the clerk of the court's office, and we have folks that distribute that information directly to the principals as well as to transportation so that bus drivers can be made aware as well. And so each school has their process for notifying the teachers of that particular student or those students if there has been a felony arrest. We have no mandate to notify of misdemeanor arrest, but if there is a felony arrest, we do notify the school principal, who in turn notifies his or her teachers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And remarkably, we have one left, and we have time for one more.
I'm the last one. I'm Renee Bergen. I'm a citizen of Port Orange. I have kids now, 2 in Spruce Creek High School and 1 in Cypress Creek Elementary. I'm also a volunteer, and I substitute at all 3 schools at Cypress Creek, Creekside, and Spruce Creek High School. One of the things I just wanted to mention is about security. When I substitute in the classrooms, there needs to be something in the classrooms for the substitute. We know where to go for fire. We know to go for bomb threat. We have no idea what to do when we sub for if there's a threat on campus. And some schools, I know Cypress Creek, when I was there, we started the red folders. When I was on PTA there, we did that. But it needs to be consistent through every school and every classroom, because it is not. And every morning I get at least 10 sub calls just in those 3 schools. So subs, I mean, they're every day. I mean, we have a ton of calls. And I agree with Chase, is we need to be notified as well if we're filling in for a classroom, if there's a threat in that class, if there's a child in that classroom that we need to be aware of. Thank you.
With that, we need to put a bow on it so that we have time to get next door for our next meeting. First of all, I appreciate everybody coming out, but you know what, Carl, why don't you do yours first?
All right, well, thank you. I want to thank everyone for taking some time to be here this evening. Principals, raise your hand, principals. I just want to see that. Man, let's give all the principals a hand. Thank you so much for what you do. All the teachers that are here, parents, students, people from the chambers of commerce, it just means a lot. You know, we operate as a school board. There's almost 70 schools, 63,000 plus students. I don't know, about 8,000 employees. We don't always get it right. And we are trying all the time, but one thing that helps us is listening and being with other people. And so we look forward to this opportunity here. things that you've said about grades of your schools in the Port Orange area. Well, here's the good news. It's not just Port Orange where our elementary grades slipped. Unfortunately, it's good news. It's good news for Port Orange. It's not good news for us as a county, but we have addressed it countywide. We got a plan in place this year. We'll see how well we do when the grades come out in the summer. I just didn't want you to think there was something in the water here in Port Orange that was causing that to happen. I do want you to say that you do have overcrowding in schools because your schools are very good. I mean, Spruce Creek wouldn't have all that overcrowding if it wasn't a school where students want to be. The fact that Atlantic High School has gone up 200 students in just a couple of years proves that that's a school where people want to be. In terms of, regarding the Bell schedule, I will tell you that my thinking on it right now is the 3 schedules that were out there. Whatever this board adopts probably won't be any one of those. It'll probably be some kind of a morph between something else, and so that's probably the way it'll be. The other thing I'll say about the Bell schedule is, you heard it here first, it won't please everybody. So take that home with you. It will not please everybody, and many of you are going to be mad and say, why did they do that? So, but let's hope there's just as many that feel like, oh, that's a very good.
And Carl's phone
thing.
number is no.
And last thing I want to say is I lived in this great city. I moved in here in 1981 in a brand new subdivision at the time that was called Deep Forest. And Ken Parker, city manager, and I were the two people that lived on the same street, and there wasn't anybody else here. And in fact, when I think back to Port Orange way back in the day, Port Orange wasn't even here until Spruce Creek High School came into town. And Spruce Creek High School got relocated here, and everybody was saying, where in the heck is that? Taylor Road, where is that? You know, why'd they put it way out there? And then all of a sudden, you know, everything else came along with it. But Port Orange is just a super school, a super place to live. The schools are great. You have such a great reputation here. And, you know, that leads to traffic, and that leads to all kinds of other issues. And my last point is, getting back to the traffic thing, we need to be out there and support that half-cent sales tax. You all supported it for the schools, and you have supported it twice for the schools. It's been money very well spent, and we need to spend some more now and get this traffic and infrastructure under control countywide. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
When it comes to the half-cent sales tax, we appreciate the school board giving us a good model of governance to follow with it. Let me just say a couple things. First of all, 1981, I was still in middle school. I wasn't yet to Spruce Creek yet. Just saying. Honestly, though, I appreciate all of you being here as elected officials. Some of you have been around for a while in your roles, and some of you are brand new to your current role, but not brand new to the issue. I've had a kid at Atlantic High School for the last 7 years. Not the same kid.
That's good. It wasn't that kid that was just.
But I will say this, I've been heavily involved in the schools at all levels for a very long time, so I see the challenges you all face. And I would hope as an elected official, all of you had adopted a vision of what it is, where it is you want to go, you know, particularly when it comes to all these issues, but particularly the bottom line, school grades, what we do for our students, because those are the ultimate stakeholders. And with that vision, you've got to have accountability every step of the way. You can't wait. You know, you've got to look at your benchmarks. Are we meeting or are we not meeting them? And if not, ask why. I would ask that all of you, as best you can, forget the race to mediocrity. Let's change whatever it is we got to change so that we have a race for excellence. And I've got to believe the things we've heard today that we're off on the right foot. And I thank you all. Appreciate your participation.
Mayor, may I say one more thing?
No?
Please.
Hold on a second.
I just want to say, and I always speak for my colleague Ida Wright, we split Port Orange, and it is our definite pleasure to serve your community. So thank you so much.